Okay, let's unpack this. We're doing a deep dive today into, well, a story that sounds almost impossible.
Mm-hmm.
A supposed ancient Egyptian city hidden deep inside the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, it's one of those stories, isn't it? It keeps popping up, really persistent.
Raises eyebrows, definitely. An Egyptian civilization in Arizona.
Hmm.
It just sounds, well, wild.
It does. It challenges, pretty much everything we think we know about ancient history, about connections across the world back then.
And the main source we're digging into for this, it's mostly based on a YouTube video that looks at the origin of the story.
Right, and that origin traces back to this single old newspaper article.
From the Arizona Gazette, dated April 5th, 1909.
So we're talking claims over a century old. It's not new news, but clearly it's a story with some real staying power.
Exactly. Keeps resurfacing. And look, our mission today, it isn't really to prove it or disprove it definitively.
Oh.
We're going to lay out the story pretty much as the source presents it. Look at the claims, the counterclaims.
And sort of explore why a story like this grabs people, what it tells us about how we look at these kinds of historical mysteries.
Yeah, because sometimes the belief itself is the interesting part. Why do people believe it? Why are others so quick to say no way?
Exactly.
Okay, so let's jump into the story itself, as told by that 1909 Arizona Gazette article. It all revolves around a man named G.E. Kincaid.
Kincaid. Right. According to the article, he was an explorer and supposedly funded by the Smithsonian Institution.
Smithsonian, okay. And his mission was...
Well, the article says he was searching for minerals.
Minerals. That sounds a little vague.
Uh,
Especially when you consider gold mining was actually banned in the canyon around that time.
right. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Was minerals code for something else? Something, more valuable?
Gold, maybe. Or something else entirely. It adds a bit of mystery right away.
It does. And the location where he supposedly made this discovery, that just deepens the whole thing.
Where exactly was this supposed to be?
The Marble Canyon region. The article puts it about 40 miles upriver from Crystal Canyon.
Okay, which even now is incredibly remote. Really difficult country.
Oh, absolutely. Try to picture this. It's supposedly 2,000 feet above the riverbed.
Wow.
And to even get to this alleged cave entrance, you'd apparently have to make a descent of 1,486 feet down the sheer canyon wall.
That's not just a hike. That's a serious climb.
Huge effort. Serious commitment just to reach the spot.
And it's in this incredibly hard-to-reach place that Kincaid claims he found it.
He found a cave entrance, according to the newspaper.
A cave entrance. Okay, and this is where it gets really dramatic, right? What was supposedly inside?
Well, according to the Gazette, it wasn't just a cave. It opened up into an enormous underground city.
An entire city. Underground. What kind of scale are we talking?
The article describes a vast network, lots of rooms, passageways, like a labyrinth.
Okay, so not just a couple of caverns. Were there specific details about the architecture?
Yes, and this is where it gets really specific and frankly kind of strange. The article mentions features that don't sound natural at all.
Like what?
Like some rooms being pretty big, it gives dimensions 30 by 40 feet,
Yeah.
which, comparable to a decent-sized apartment today.
That's a big space to carve out underground, way up there. What else?
Oval-shaped doors, round air vents,
Yeah.
supposedly for ventilation.
Okay.
And the walls were described as being, get this, 3.5 feet thick.
3.5 feet thick. Wow.
Yeah.
Imagine the work involved. Carving that or building it inside a canyon, 2,000 feet up a cliff.
It's immense. What kind of people would do that? And why there in such a hidden spot?
Was it for defense? Secrecy? Really makes you wonder.
It does. And the estimated size of the population it could hold is also just staggering.
How many?
The article suggests it could have housed up to 50,000 people.
50,000. Living underground. In the Grand Canyon, forget building it for a second. How would you even feed 50,000 people there?
Cool.
Water. Supplies.
Exactly. The logistics are just mind-boggling. It immediately makes you question the scale of the claim.
Okay. But the story gets even wilder with the artifacts Kincaid supposedly found inside, right?
Oh, yeah. This is where it goes off the rails for many people.
What kind of stuff did he supposedly find?
Well, some of it sounds plausible. Weapons, copper instruments, things you might find at an old site.
Right.
But then the article throws in something completely unexpected, something that clashes, like totally
Okay.
a giant Buddha statue.
Hold on. A Buddha statue
Yeah.
in an ancient site
Yeah.
in the Grand Canyon.
Yep.
That just feels wrong. So out of place. It makes the whole thing even harder to swallow.
It's incredibly jarring, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
you've got ancient Egypt over here, Buddhism developing way over there,
Yeah.
different continents, different millennia, finding artifacts from both side by side in Arizona. It just doesn't fit any standard history.
It's like the article is deliberately mixing the most unlikely things possible. And it didn't stop with the Buddha, did it?
No, no. Alongside the Buddha, the article claims Kincaid found actual ancient Egyptian artifacts.
Like what?
Urns, cups, and even hieroglyphics.
So let me get this straight. A huge underground city built with massive effort in a super remote spot, and inside there's supposedly a mix of ancient Egyptian stuff and a giant Buddha.
That's the claim. It's a lot. It really pushes the boundaries of belief.
And there were mummies too.
Mummies, too, found in what the article calls a warrior's barracks. All male, apparently covered in clay and wrapped in some kind of bark fabric.
Okay, so putting all these incredible, almost fantastical claims together, it's really important to step back and remember where this entire story comes from.
Right. A single newspaper article.
From 1909.
One source. Over 100 years old. And what's totally missing?
Proof? Verification. There are no photos of this supposed city, are there?
None that have ever surfaced. No other explorers from the time, no scientists backing it up with their own accounts. Nothing.
Which, immediately makes you question the source itself. Journalism back in 1909, maybe the standards weren't quite the same, especially for a really juicy story.
Oh, for sure. Egyptian city found in Grand Canyon. That headline sells papers. It's pure, well, clickbait, 1909 style.
It's box office, like you said. Sensationalism.
Exactly. So given how wild the claims are, and the fact it's just this one article, the simplest explanation might just be, well, that the newspaper, or maybe Kincaid himself, exaggerated things.
Or maybe even made a lot of it up.
Possibly. Made it for a really great story.
But, okay, the video source we're looking at, it does bring up some other related historical tidbits, things that some people use to argue there might be some basis for an Egyptian connection, even if not this specific city.
Right. It touches on things debated elsewhere, like the sailing abilities of the ancient Egyptians.
How good were they, actually?
Better than maybe some people think. They had ships, good ones, capable of long trips. We know they sailed the Red Sea out into the Indian Ocean. They built sophisticated docks. They traded with the land of Punt, this sort of mysterious place, source of exotic goods, that archaeologists are still trying to pin down exactly where it was.
So the argument is, if they could sail that far,
Yeah.
maybe they could have gone further. Across the Atlantic.
It's a huge leap, obviously. You'd need favorable winds, currents, a lot of luck or knowledge we don't know they had. But it's presented in the source as, a point to consider. A possibility.
A long shot, maybe.
A very long shot. Then there's that other controversial thing the video mentions, the stuff found on mummies.
Ah, yeah, the cocaine and tobacco traces on, 3,000-year-old Egyptian mummies.
Exactly. That's a really fascinating claim, but it's highly debated.
Why debated? What's the issue?
Well, because cocaine and tobacco plants are native to the Americas.
Right.
So if you could definitively prove those substances were on ancient Egyptian mummies, it would be huge evidence for contact between Africa and the Americas way before Columbus.
It would completely rewrite history.
Totally. But the findings themselves are really contested. Lots of scientists question the methods, suggested maybe the samples got contaminated over the centuries, or there are other explanations.
So interesting, but not solid proof.
Definitely not solid, undisputed proof you can hang your hat on.
And the video also mentions Native American legends, stories about ant people.
Yeah, it touches on those. Many Native American traditions have stories about ancient beings, sometimes associated with the earth or living underground. The Hopi ant people legends are one example, where these beings supposedly sheltered people underground during cataclysms.
So the connection being hinted at is, maybe these legends are like a folk memory of real people living underground, maybe even the builders of this alleged city.
It's kind of presented as food for thought, like maybe there's an echo in these stories of something real involving ancient underground structures or peoples in that area. Not direct evidence for this city, but maybe background context.
Okay. But let's circle back to the biggest problem for the Kincaid story, the one from the article, the Smithsonian connection.
Yes, this is absolutely key. And it's where the story hits a major roadblock.
Because the article explicitly says Kincaid shipped artifacts to the Smithsonian.
Right, and that they sent a team, led by a Professor S.A. Jordan, to investigate the site he found.
So you'd think the Smithsonian would have records, right, of Kincaid, Jordan, the expedition, the artifacts.
You would think so, but here's the critical point. The Smithsonian Institution flat out denies any knowledge of any of this.
Denies it completely.
Completely. They say they have no record of a G.E. Kincaid or a Professor S.A. Jordan ever being affiliated with them in that way. No record of such an expedition. And they've stated publicly, multiple times, that no ancient Egyptian artifacts have ever been found in North America.
Okay, wow. That's a direct contradiction. So either the 1909 newspaper article is just totally fabricated,
That's one possibility the source video discusses. Simple hoax or exaggeration by the paper.
which fits with the lack of other evidence and the sensational nature of it all.
Right. But then there's the other theory, the one people who want to believe the story often lean towards.
Which is
That the Smithsonian is involved, but they're covering it up.
a cover-up. Why on earth would they do that?
Well, the argument goes that a discovery like this, Egyptians in the Grand Canyon, would totally upend established history.
Right, it changes everything we thought we knew.
Exactly. It challenges the narrative that ancient civilizations were mostly isolated, that Egyptians didn't cross the Atlantic. And the theory is this kind of paradigm shift threatens the authority of institutions like the Smithsonian, which are seen as guardians of that established history.
So basically a conspiracy to protect the academic status quo. Keep history neat and tidy.
That's the conspiracy angle presented in the source material, yeah. Protecting their narrative.
But the video also offers some simpler explanations, right? Less conspiratorial.
It does. More mundane possibilities. Like, okay, maybe Kincaid did find something, maybe some artifacts,
Oh.
but maybe they weren't actually Egyptian. Maybe they were misidentified Native American artifacts or something else entirely.
Okay, that seems plausible.
Or maybe he did send things to the Smithsonian, but they just got lost. I mean, the Smithsonian has millions and millions of items in its collections. It's not impossible for things to get misplaced or miscatalogued over 100 years.
Yeah, that warehouse scene from Indiana Jones comes to mind. Vast archives.
Exactly. Or another simple idea. Maybe Kincaid did approach the Smithsonian with his story, and maybe some objects, but his claims were so outlandish they just dismissed him out of hand.
Like they thought he was a crank.
Right. And maybe they never even formally logged the interaction or kept whatever he sent because they deemed it bogus from the start.
Those explanations feel a bit more grounded, maybe,
Yeah.
than a massive century-long cover-up.
Perhaps. But whatever the reason, it all comes back to the same fundamental issue, doesn't it?
The lack of any solid, concrete evidence.
Yep. Despite this really detailed, fascinating story from 1909, there's just nothing tangible today. No photos we can verify, no artifacts confirmed to be from this site, no independent accounts that stand up.
And that's where, thinking critically is just so important. When you hear claims, this extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Absolutely. The burden of proof is on the claim itself. It's fun to imagine lost cities, hidden histories, sure. But you have to look hard at the evidence, or, like here, the glaring lack of it.
So if someone hypothetically wanted to prove this story was true, to move it from legend to fact, what would they actually need to do?
Well, first and foremost, independent verification. Someone would have to physically find the cave entrance described in that article.
In that specific remote spot in Marble Canyon.
Exactly. That's step one. Find the location. Then, assuming they found a cave system that matches the description,
Then what?
then you'd need rigorous professional documentation. Proper archaeology, maps, surveys, photographs, the works.
Okay.
And crucially, critically, you'd need to find artifacts. And those artifacts would need intense scrutiny. You'd have to prove they were real, first off, not fakes. Then you'd need experts to confirm without doubt that they are ancient Egyptian, or Buddhist for that matter, and then accurately date them to fit the time frame implied by the story.
So serious, painstaking scientific work, not just finding a cave.
Oh, yeah. Finding irrefutable proof directly linking that cave and its contents to the specific claims made back in 1909. It's a tall order.
And let's just imagine for a second. What if someone did do all that? What if the city was found, proven real, artifacts authenticated?
Yeah.
What would that actually mean?
Oh, the implications would be just seismic, earth-shattering, really.
How so?
It would force us to completely reevaluate our understanding of the ancient world. It would mean ancient civilizations were way more connected than we thought.
Transatlantic travel, thousands of years ago.
Exactly. It would suggest capabilities and interactions we currently don't accept happened. It would open up entirely new fields of research into, ancient global connections. Pre-Columbian contact would be proven in a spectacular way.
It sounds like it would basically require throwing out huge chunks of the history books and starting over.
Pretty much. It would fundamentally challenge and rewrite established historical narratives. It's a thrilling thought experiment, just considering the scale of that potential shift.
It really makes you think, though, how much might still be unknown, even in a place as supposedly well explored as the Grand Canyon.
That's it, isn't it? This story, whether it turns out to be a complete fabrication or holds some grain of forgotten truth, it does highlight that. There's so much we don't know about our planet, about our deep past.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive on the supposed Grand Canyon Egyptian city,
Yeah.
what's the main thing you hope listeners take away?
I think it's mostly about applying that critical lens. When you encounter these really sensational stories, look at the source. Ask, where's the evidence? Is there any evidence?
Right.
Be open to different explanations, hoax, mistake, maybe even a real mystery yet to be solved. But don't just buy into a story because it sounds exciting. Question it.
Dig deeper. Evaluate the sources for yourself. Try to read your own informed conclusion.
Exactly that.
Because this story, it's a great case study. So intriguing, but it shows how myths can stick around and why demanding proof is so vital.
Mm-hmm.
But it also leaves you with that little nagging thought. In a place as immense, as complex as the Grand Canyon, could there still be secrets hidden away? Things we haven't found yet.
And that's the enduring appeal of mysteries like this, isn't it? That sense of possibility, that something truly extraordinary might still be out there waiting.
It keeps the explorers exploring, I guess.
Always.
Well, this has been a really fascinating, if strange, journey into this persistent story. We've laid out the claims from that 1909 article, the wild details of the city, the artifacts, the other historical threads the source brought up, and that big conflict with the Smithsonian's denial.
Yeah, quite a tale.
So now it's really up to you, the listener, to weigh it all up and decide what you make of it.
Keep asking questions, keep digging, and definitely stay curious.